They told me to smile, while they handed me the chains. Chains made of guilt, of silence, of loyalty to those who never bled for me. I wore them, like a good puppet does, tight around my throat, wrapped around my spine, digging into my skin until I forgot I was bleeding. I was raised to serve, raised to shrink, raised to believe that obedience was love and sacrifice was strength. They convinced me that to bend was noble, that to stay silent was wise, that to suffer was holy. But they were never the ones who paid the price. I gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left but bones. And even then they asked for more, smiling, clapping, calling it devotion. They praised the ruins they made of me. Do you know what it feels like to be applauded for your own destruction? They called me selfless, but what they meant was useful. What they meant was controllable. What they meant was silent. And I was, God, I was. For years, I wore their doubts like armor and wondered why I couldn't fly. They dressed me in their fears, fed me their limits, and called it protection. They were never protecting me. They were protecting their control, their comfort, their illusion that I would never leave. But chains rust, even the pretty ones, especially the pretty ones. I started to feel it, the weight, the heaviness in my chest that wouldn't leave. The scream I buried so deep, it turned into silence. That silence almost killed me, but it also woke me up because silence has a sound, a loud one. And in it, I heard the truth, that I was never free. Not once. Not in their hands. Not in their shadow. And the most dangerous thing you can do to someone like me is make me realize I've been caged. Because now, every link in these chains feels like fire. Every memory of my submission feels like acid in my throat. I don't want their acceptance anymore. I don't crave their approval. I don't kneel for the people who watched me drown and called it growth. I see them now for what they are. Cowards in masks. Parasites feeding on the ones too kind to say no. Too loyal to walk away. But not anymore. I don't belong to them. Not their praise. Not their guilt. Not their narrative. I was not born to be leashed. I was not created to serve small minds. I was not built for cages. I was made of fire, and they tried to bury me under wet blankets and whisper threats. But fire doesn't die in darkness. It learns to burn quietly, until the day it explodes. And today, I explode. So let them keep their chains. Let them polish them for someone else. I've carried their weight long enough. And I'm done mistaking burden for purpose, because these shoulders, they were made for more, not for chains, but for wings. Let them tremble, let them watch, let them whisper, I am rising, and the sound they hear in the distance is the echo of their power shattering. They smiled when I bled for them, they clapped when I crawled through hell thinking I did it for love. But the truth, they never cared. Not really. Not when I broke myself to keep them whole. Not when I silenced my pain just to hear theirs. Not when I drowned in my own storms so they could bask in the sun. They never looked back. Not once. Not ever. I was convenience, a shield, a crutch, a placeholder in their self-serving theater. And I was blind. Blind enough to believe that sacrifice bought loyalty. Foolish enough to think that love meant safety. But love isn't what they gave, it's what they took. They took my time, my trust, my hunger, my fire, and they gave me doubt, they gave me silence, they gave me chains, painted gold and called duty. They applauded my weakness, because it kept them strong. They fed on my apologies, my hesitation, my guilt. They saw my kindness as currency, and when I finally needed them, well, I was the one bleeding. Where were they? Gone. Watching. Smiling. That's when it hit me. They never saw me as human, only as useful. And once I was no longer convenient, I became disposable. That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic. Just cold. Like steel on the spine. It crept in, that bitter clarity. They never loved me. They loved the control. They loved the silence. They loved the version of me that never spoke back. But I'm not that version anymore. I've buried it deep, dark, done. And now I see them for what they are, leeches wearing masks, parasites dressed in promises. They called it family, they called it friendship, they called it loyalty. But it was always a leash, and I was trained to thank them for tightening it. Not anymore, never again. You feel it too, don't you? That shift, inside. That slow, burning rage, the kind that doesn't scream, it builds, quiet, relentless, unstoppable, because once you realize they never cared, you stop asking for permission to leave. You stop pleading for people who hand you the knife. You stop apologizing for surviving. They wanted obedience. They got evolution, they wanted silence. They woke a storm. Let them pretend. Let them lie. Let them play victim to the monster they created. I won't carry their guilt anymore. I won't wear their shame like skin. I won't love people who only loved my weakness. That version of me, the one who begged, who bent, who broke. He died the moment I opened my eyes. And in his place stands someone they can't use, can't shame, can't break, so let them watch, let them whisper, let them wonder who I've become, because I'm not coming back. And if they ever cared, they would have never given me a reason to become this. They told you to blend in, to smile when it hurts, to bow when it burns, to kneel so low. You forgot how it felt to stand. They gave you a mask and called it your face, told you to wear it with pride. But you always knew it didn't fit. You were never one of them. Not because you didn't try. You did. You silenced your soul to fit their harmony, choked on your dreams just to keep their comfort intact, dimmed your light because it made them squint. And still, they looked through you like you were nothing. You begged for a seat at their table, starved while they feasted on your silence, clapped for them while they mocked your voice. But you were never one of them. They live in boxes, think in chains, breathe in fear, and call it safety. You were born from chaos, shaped by storms, forged in a silence they could never survive. And that scares them. They see something in your eyes they'll never understand. That fire, that edge, that refusal to shatter when everything collapsed. It makes them nervous. Because you don't follow, you never did. You question too much, feel too deeply, speak too sharply. And when you fall, you rise with pieces sharper than before. They call it rebellion, but it's truth. They call it ego, but it's self-worth. They call it darkness, but it's power they'll never hold. You're not one of them. You don't beg for permission. You don't ask to exist. You don't water yourself down to keep others from drowning. You rise. You scorch. You demand your space even if it makes them uncomfortable. They want you to shrink. They want you small, manageable, forgettable. But tell me, were you born to be forgettable? No. You were made to be a storm in a world that worships silence. You were made to be the glitch in their perfect little system. So stop apologizing. Stop explaining the fire in your blood. Stop softening the blade just so they can sleep easy. You owe them nothing. Not your silence, not your shame, not your surrender. They will never understand you because they were built to follow. And you were born to break the path entirely. You are not one of them, and you never were. Let them talk. Let them twist your story. Let them hate what they don't have the courage to become. But you keep walking. You keep rising. You keep setting fire to every rule they tried to chain you with. Because in the end, you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out. To stand alone if you have to stand in your truth, no matter how many tremble in its shadow. You're not one of them. You're something far greater. And soon, they'll wish they had seen it sooner. But by then, you'll be too far ahead to even hear their regret. Let them stay where they belong. Behind you, they told me to hold on, to forgive, to be patient, to wait. Wait for them to understand. Wait for them to change. Wait for a day that never came. And I did. God, I did. I held on until my fingers bled from the grip. I swallowed my fire just to keep their world from burning. I wore their comfort like a noose and called it peace. But I am done. Done watering dead gardens. Done carrying ghosts on my back like I owe them life. Done pretending I don't feel the fire screaming inside me. Let it scream. Let it roar. Because now I burn. I am not afraid of destruction anymore. Because I finally understand some things were never meant to survive the rise. Not every friend. Not every memory. Not every version of me that played small so they could feel big. You want to grow? Then burn what doesn't serve you. Burn their expectations. Burn the fake smiles. Burn the voice in your head that says, stay soft, or they'll leave. Let them leave. Let the bridges turn to ash behind you. Let the guilt peel from your skin, like old armor. Let the silence echo with the truth you were too scared to say. I don't need them, because you don't. You never did. All those years, you were dimming yourself to fit into their shadows, hiding your claws so you wouldn't make them uncomfortable, folding your wings so they wouldn't call you arrogant. But what did it give you? Pain, exhaustion, an identity built on pleasing cowards who feared your light. Not anymore. Now, I walk into the fire, and I do not flinch. I tear off the layers they forced on me, the roles, the shame, the lies, and I feed it to the flame. Because this inferno is mine. Every betrayal, every silent scream, every time they looked at me and saw only what I could give them, it built the pyre. And I'm the match. They'll call it selfish. They'll call it cruel. They'll say you changed. And you did. You became what they feared. UNTAMED. Unapologetic. Alive. So let them talk. Let them choke on the smoke of their comfort zones crumbling. Let them run from the heat they said you'd never survive. Let them remember your name in the ashes of everything they tried to bury you with. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your softness. You owe them nothing. Only the fire remains. Only the truth. Only you. So burn it all down. And when the smoke clears, stand tall, alone, unchained, reborn. This is your rise. This is your reckoning. This is your beginning. Let it burn. Let it all burn. They said I should be grateful. Grateful for their silence when I screamed. Grateful for the crumbs they threw when I was starving for love. Grateful for the chains they dressed in ribbons and called family. But I see it now. I was never loved. I was used, fed just enough to stay obedient, held just tight enough to make escape feel like betrayal. They trained me to bleed on command, smile on cue, apologize for existing. And when I gave them everything, they said it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. Let me say this clearly. You owe them nothing. Not your peace, not your silence, not your second chances, not your tears, your explanations, your apologies. Not anymore. They made you feel like a villain for walking away. They made you doubt your rage, question your fire. But what they feared wasn't your anger. It was your awakening. They feared the day you'd stop needing them, the day you'd see through their lies, the day you'd stand up and say, no more. You don't owe them the version of you that shrinks, that bends, that begs to be understood. Let them misunderstand. Let them choke on their false narratives. You owe them no kindness for the pain they gave freely, no comfort for the wounds they carved in your soul, no forgiveness for sins they never confessed. They told you family meant loyalty, but loyalty without respect is slavery. And you were born for more than servitude, dressed as tradition. They told you to be humble. Translation: dim yourself so they could shine, shrink so they could feel tall, stay silent so their egos wouldn't shatter. But you owe them no more silence, no more shrinking, no more hiding. You owe them nothing. Not the version of you that kept breaking to keep the peace. Not the parts of you that stayed small so they could feel powerful. Not the light you extinguished just to fit in their shadows. And if they call you cruel now, good, let them. Wear it like armor. Because kindness to the cruel is betrayal to yourself. You gave them loyalty, they gave you wounds. You gave them patience, they gave you silence. You gave them love, and they fed you to their pride. This is your turning point, the point where guilt dies, the point where shame burns, the point where the chain snaps and the flame inside you is finally unleashed. Let them talk, let them judge, let them turn their backs. They lost the right to know you the day they decided to break you. They lost the right to be loved when they turned love into control. You don't owe them healing for the pain they caused. You don't owe them closure for the doors they slammed shut. You don't owe them your light when they worshipped your darkness. This is your voice now, raw, ruthless, real, and it doesn't ask for permission. It commands. So scream it if you must. Whisper it if you're tired. But know it in your bones, you owe them nothing. Not anymore. Not ever again. They thought it was over. When I walked away, they thought I was running. But I wasn't running. I was evolving, shedding the dead weight of their expectations, burning the masks they forced me to wear. I wasn't leaving. I was becoming. Let them talk. Let them write my eulogy while I'm still breathing. Let them point. Let them scoff, let them lie. I don't need their approval. I don't even need their silence. I just need space, space to rise, space to rebuild in the ashes of everything they tried to destroy, you see. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. The quiet before the storm they never saw coming. Because the path ahead, it won't be paved with comfort. It won't be filled with handouts, applause, or soft landings. No, it'll be brutal. Cold, unforgiving, and still. I'll walk it, alone maybe, but unshaken. This journey isn't for the ones who wait for permission. It's not for the ones who fold when the world frowns. It's for the ones who've been broken and still chose to rise. Again, and again, and again. You want comfort? Turn back. You want to be liked? Sit down. You want peace? Die quietly. But if you want freedom, real freedom, then prepare for war, the kind of war that happens inside. The war where your old self begs you to stop, where your fears whisper sweet lullabies, where doubt kisses your forehead like a mother and says, stay small. But I'm not small, not anymore. I've outgrown their games, outgrown their praise, outgrown their cages. There is nothing behind me worth going back for. No apology I need, no closure that matters. Let them keep the last word. Let them rot in their comfort zones. Because I am chasing something bigger than validation. I am walking toward a version of me that terrifies them. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'm free. And nothing terrifies the world more than someone who no longer needs it. So let this be the declaration. Not of revenge, not of bitterness, but of liberation. This is the part of the story they don't tell you. The part after the breakdown, after the betrayal, after the silence. This is the part where you become untouchable, unapologetic, unstoppable. No, I don't have a map. No, I don't have guarantees. But I have fire, and I have silence, and I have the kind of rage that doesn't burn bridges, it burns kingdoms. And that's enough. So if you're watching, waiting for me to fail, you'll be waiting a long time. Because I don't need their cheers. I don't need their love. I don't even need their understanding. I need only one thing. To keep going. One breath. One step. One war at a time. Because my journey, it's just beginning. And I swear on every scar they gave me, I will never crawl again. Leave them behind. Let that echo in your mind until it roars like thunder. Leave them behind. The ones who laughed when you broke, the ones who smiled when you stumbled, the ones who whispered that you'd never become anything without them. Let them stay behind. Where they belong, they were never your family, never your friends. They were shadows pretending to be shelter, chains pretending to be comfort. But now you see it, don't you? Now, you feel it. That fire in your chest, that silence in your soul. That's not emptiness. That's power, waiting to be unleashed. Because the truth is they needed you weak. They needed you silent. They needed you small enough to fit inside their story. But you were never meant to live in someone else's script. You were meant to rewrite the ending. Let them rot in the roles they chose. Let them cling to the version of you that doesn't exist anymore. The quiet one, the obedient one, the broken one. That version of you died in silence, in pain, and in darkness. But from that funeral, you were reborn, stronger, colder, sharper than ever. So let them mourn who you used to be. Let them grieve for the control they lost. Let them build stories where you're the villain. Because if becoming powerful makes me the villain, then so be it. I'd rather be hated for my truth than loved for my silence. They'll call you heartless. They'll call you cruel. But remember, the ones who called you selfish were the same ones who fed on your sacrifice. The ones who cry betrayal now are the same ones who left you bleeding when you needed them most. So why go back? Why explain yourself to people who decided not to understand you? You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them kindness. You don't owe them anything. Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them fear what you've become. Because you're not turning around. You're not reaching back. You're not dragging dead weight up the mountain you bled to climb. No more apologies. No more compromises. No more shrinking. You didn't come this far to play small again. You didn't survive the storm to go back into the flood. This is your ascent. And not everyone deserves a seat at the summit. So leave them behind. Leave the guilt. Leave the shame. Leave the pieces of yourself you broke to make them whole. They had their chance. They chose comfort over truth, mediocrity over growth, control over connection. You chose fire. You chose freedom. You chose yourself. So keep walking. Eyes forward, back straight, heart untouchable. And when they call your name, don't turn around. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them choke on the silence you leave behind. Because this is the part of the story where the hero dies and the legend begins. So walk alone and let every step echo like thunder through the ruins of who they thought you were. Because freedom was never meant to be shared with those who caged you. Leave them behind. Your journey is just beginning.